Do you remember the first time you saw a T-Rex step out through the rain and wondered how it could possibly look so real? In 1993, Steven Spielberg turned Michael Crichton's novel into Jurassic Park, starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, and Richard Attenborough. The film not only dominated the box office, but also ushered in a new era of visual effects, making millions of viewers believe that dinosaurs had truly come back to life. But behind those legendary scenes were many strange stories that very few people have ever heard. Today we are going to explore 12 weird facts about Jurassic Park, 1993. But before we begin, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support will help us continue bringing you more fascinating behind-the-scenes stories about classic movies. Now then, welcome to Jurassic Park. All right, let's start the countdown with number 12. The shortcut called Mr. DNA. When science was dressed up as a Saturday morning cartoon, Jurassic Park accomplished what seemed impossible. It explained cloning technology to an entire generation of moviegoers, and we all nodded along as if to say, yeah, that makes sense. In Michael Crichton's novel, the scientific explanation stretches across multiple pages, with long discussions about restriction enzymes, DNA sequencing, and complex molecular theories. That worked perfectly in a novel, but it was almost a death sentence for a summer blockbuster, where many people in the audience were just kids munching on resonance while watching the movie. The earliest screenplay drafts followed the same approach, with characters sitting around explaining one scientific concept after another, unintentionally slowing the pace of the film. Spielberg quickly realized the problem and decided to turn the entire explanation into a lively animated film. That is how Mr. DNA was born. The cheerful mascot with his constant smile condensed an entire field of complicated science into an introduction that lasted just over 2 minutes, like Schoolhouse Rock, mixed with an amusement park safety video. To bring the character to life, the filmmakers cast Greg Burson, the well-known voice actor who had inherited many classic roles from Hanna-Barbera and Looney Tunes. His warm, friendly voice made Mr. DNA feel like the familiar host of a Saturday morning cartoon. But there is one detail that very few people noticed. Mr. DNA was actually a deliberate piece of satire. The character reflected the way John Hammond commercialized science, turning an incredibly dangerous technology into a fun entertainment attraction, polished to the point that it even ended with a gift shop. And it worked far better than anyone expected. A lot of people walked out of the theater genuinely believing that all you needed was a mosquito trapped in amber to create a dinosaur. To be honest, I am still waiting for a real Mr. DNA t-shirt comeback. Number 11. James Cameron almost turned Jurassic Park into an R-rated nightmare. Jurassic Park almost belonged to another director, and if that had happened, the body count probably would have been much higher. In 1990, Michael Crichton's manuscript attracted a lot of directors, but the competition eventually came down to just two names, Steven Spielberg and James Cameron. Thanks to the existing relationship between Universal and Crichton, Spielberg secured the rights first. In Cameron's vision, Jurassic Park would have had the tone of Aliens, except the aliens would have been replaced with dinosaurs. There would have been much less wonder and awe. Instead, the dinosaurs would have been relentless, killing machines in an R-rated survival horror film filled with dark corridors, a very high death toll, and non-stop tension from beginning to end. Spielberg chose a different direction, with Sam Neill bringing a sense of calm and Jeff Goldblum delivering a memorable and charismatic Ian Malcolm. Looking at the films Cameron had already made, it is not hard to imagine Arnold Schwarzenegger showing up on Isla Nublar carrying a massive gun. There would have been fewer lines like "Life finds a way," and a lot more lines like "Get to the chopper." Cameron later admitted that Spielberg made the right choice. It was the balance between wonder and fear, between breathtaking moments and suspense, that turned Jurassic Park into a cultural phenomenon instead of just another monster movie. But honestly, there is probably still a part of all of us that wonders what Cameron's version would have been like. Maybe somewhere in a parallel universe, that movie really exists, and it is probably far more terrifying. And if Spielberg had been the one to make Avatar, well, maybe that is best left to the imagination. Number 10. The Satellite Director, when Spielberg was living in two worlds at once. In 1993, Steven Spielberg pulled off something that, if it happened to a director today, would probably make them turn off every notification, log out of every app, and immediately call a therapist. At the same time, he was directing Jurassic Park, the most technologically ambitious film of its era, while also pouring everything he had into Schindler's List, one of the most important dramatic films in cinema history. After moving to Krakow, Poland, to film Schindler's List, Spielberg had almost no time to rest. Between shooting sessions, he would review test footage and make notes on the visual effects of the massive digital T-Rex walking through the rain. Spielberg later admitted that constantly shifting between the completely opposite emotional worlds of the two films left him mentally and emotionally exhausted. And remember, there was no FaceTime, no Zoom, and no modern online meeting tools back then. In 1993, reviewing and approving CGI effects remotely was almost unheard of. To make it happen, Spielberg used a post-production station in Poland, connected by satellite to receive footage sent by ILM from California. The system was bulky, incredibly expensive, and the image quality was only a fraction of what we consider normal today. In other words, he was watching computer-generated dinosaur scenes over a satellite connection, while most of us were still trying to figure out call waiting on our phones. The enormous workload also led Spielberg to rely on George Lucas for help. Lucas and his team at Skywalker Sound handled part of the final sound work and post-production process. That is why Jurassic Park still feels so polished and seamless, despite being made under enormous pressure. Spielberg and Lucas were working almost like a single filmmaking team, even though they were separated by half the world. So the next time your Wi-Fi suddenly drops during an online meeting, remember that back in 1993, Spielberg was sitting in Krakow, watching dinosaur footage transmitted by satellite from California. Number 9. Dilophosaurus, the biggest Jurassic Park trick of the 1990s. Every kid in 1993 seemed to learn the same lesson in the most unforgettable way. In Jurassic Park, if a creature looked friendly, that was usually the moment your problems were about to begin. The Dilophosaurus did not roar or stomp around to threaten anyone. It simply tilted its head, made a few surprisingly cute sounds, and then made you lose your trust in small creatures forever. But the version seen on screen was actually closer to a science fiction creation wearing the shape of a dinosaur. Spitting venom? There is absolutely no scientific evidence that any dinosaur ever did that. It was entirely an idea created by Michael Crichton. The expandable neck frill was also fictional, inspired by the modern frilled lizard. In real life, the Dilophosaurus was more than 20 feet long. In the film, Spielberg deliberately made it much smaller so audiences would not confuse it with a velociraptor. He wanted it to look harmless enough to make you think you could walk right up to it, only to regret that decision a few seconds later. Even the sound design was carefully planned to create a false sense of safety. The soft little chirps before the attack were designed to make the audience relax and let their guard down at the worst possible moment. Everyone probably remembers that scene. Nedry slipped in the mud, picked up his glasses, and slowly realized this was no longer a joke. Standing in front of him was a nightmare wearing a friendly face. Maybe from that moment on, many of us stopped trusting anything that looked a little too cute. Number 8. The 15-minute lesson. When Spielberg proved that less really is more. Here is a number that will surprise you. The dinosaurs in Jurassic Park appear for only about 15 minutes out of the film's total running time of 127 minutes. And within those 15 minutes, the CGI accounts for less than 6 minutes. Spielberg understood that the less the dinosaurs appeared, the more memorable each appearance would become. By limiting the use of CGI, the team at ILM was able to devote all of their effort to every scale, every blink, and every drop of saliva. That is why those effects are still convincing, even more than 3 decades later. He learned this lesson from Jaws. When the shark kept malfunctioning, Spielberg was forced to hide it more than he had planned. Unexpectedly, that made audiences even more frightened. With Jurassic Park, he applied that strategy again. Keep the dinosaurs hidden, let the jungle do its job. Then there was their real weight as well. When the T-Rex pressed down on the roof of the Ford Explorer, the vehicle actually bent downward. It was an animatronic weighing about 13,000 pounds pressing down on real metal. The actors were not performing with a tennis ball attached to a stick either. Stan Winston's team built raptors that could perform and a T-Rex that could breathe, blink, and bite, all operated entirely by mechanical systems. The full-size raptor models even required the set to be modified so they could be put into operation. With only 15 minutes of dinosaurs on screen, Jurassic Park amazed the world for more than 3 decades. Spielberg proved that sometimes restraint creates a greater impact than spectacle. Number 7, the hero of Jurassic Park, when the T-Rex stole the ending. If Spielberg had kept the original ending, the most famous dinosaur in movie history would not have appeared at all during the final sequence of Jurassic Park. In the earliest drafts, the ending was much quieter. The group of characters would defeat the raptors by using the environment inside the visitor center itself. Doors, hallways, and even the dinosaur skeleton displays would become weapons. The tension was still there, but it was clearly not the kind of ending that would make an entire theater jump out of their seats. While watching the daily footage, Spielberg quickly realized one thing. Audiences were captivated by the T-Rex every time it appeared. Every scene with the T-Rex left a powerful impression, so why leave the biggest star of the movie out of the entire final act? That was when he decided to abandon the original ending. Instead, the T-Rex charged into the visitor center, suddenly attacked the raptors, and the group of characters survived the chaos by sheer luck. The moment when dinosaurs ruled the Earth banner slowly fell in front of the roaring T-Rex is also believed to have been added late in production, turning a rescue scene into the coronation of the king of the dinosaurs. That one change completely altered how audiences felt as they walked out of the theater. Instead of simply being terrified of the dinosaurs and wanting to run away from them, they were cheering for one of them. The T-Rex was no longer just the terrifying predator in the rain. By the end of the film, it had become the unexpected hero, saving the characters the audience cared about and officially becoming the symbol of the entire Jurassic Park franchise. Let's pause for a moment. We have a quick question for everyone. Do you think Jurassic Park is the greatest dinosaur movie of all time? Or is there another one that deserves the title? Let us know your answer in the comments. We would love to see what everyone chooses. While you are thinking about it, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. That will help the channel continue to grow and bring you more fascinating behind-the-scenes stories. All right, let's get back to the countdown with number 6, busting the biggest dinosaur myths. When Hollywood rewrote paleontology, Jurassic Park made an entire generation believe 2 things about dinosaurs. The interesting part is that both of them were wrong. The first was the velociraptor. In real life, Velociraptor mongoliensis weighed only about 30 pounds, most likely had feathers, and hunted only small prey. It certainly was not the kind of dinosaur capable of opening the door to an industrial kitchen. The raptors in the film were actually based on Deinonychus, a larger, stronger, and far more terrifying relative. But you have to admit, the name Deinonychus sounds more like a disease than the name of a monster in a Hollywood blockbuster. That is why Michael Crichton chose the name Velociraptor in his novel from the very beginning. It was short, powerful, and sounded very cinematic, like the name of a luxury sports car that could bite people. In this case, accuracy had to give way to impact. Interestingly, just as the film was nearing completion, paleontologists announced the discovery of Utahraptor, a giant dinosaur with body proportions very similar to those of the raptors in the film. So similar that Stan Winston once joked, "We created it first, then they discovered it." But that was still not the biggest myth. Everyone probably remembers Alan Grant's line, "Don't move. It won't see you if you don't move." That line became the survival lesson of an entire generation of Gen X. The unfortunate part is, it was completely wrong. The T-Rex had forward-facing eyes, excellent binocular vision, and an extremely keen sense of smell. In other words, it was more like a giant hunting dog than a predator that reacted only to movement. Standing still while sweat had already soaked through your khaki pants would not help you fool it. So why did Spielberg still include that detail? Because in the novel, the dinosaurs were created from the DNA of many modern species, including frogs. Spielberg took advantage of that very ambiguity to serve the story. After all, the sight of a child trying to stand perfectly still in front of a 7-ton predator is always far more dramatic and emotional than, being eaten immediately. Jurassic Park is a wonderful film, but if you treat it as a textbook about dinosaurs, that is an entirely different story. Number 5. The Summer of the Dinosaurs, when Jurassic Park devoured the box office. In June 1993, the whole world seemed to have one shared mission: to go to the theater and watch Jurassic Park. When it opened with a $47 million opening weekend, the film did not just break the box office record, it crushed it in spectacular fashion. Jurassic Park soared past Batman Returns and redefined what a blockbuster opening looked like. Adjusted for today's dollars, that figure would be roughly $100 million, back when a movie ticket still cost little more than the loose change forgotten between the cushions of a couch. Throughout that summer, it seemed like everyone was watching the same movie. There were no recommendation algorithms, no spoilers flooding social media, and no streaming platforms. There was only Jurassic Park dominating every conversation, from office break rooms to school cafeterias across America. Then there was the iconic logo, the dinosaur skeleton inside the red, yellow, and black circle, originally designed by Chip Kidd for Michael Crichton's novel, suddenly appeared everywhere. Universal did not simply market Jurassic Park, they turned it into a cultural phenomenon. Kenner quickly released a line of dinosaur toys with removable pieces of flesh that looked as though they had just been bitten off. Jurassic Park lunchboxes filled school cafeterias. McDonald's joined the craze with giant meal promotions that came with a T-Rex cup, a prize that made kids more than willing to forget about eating healthy, even though many of those cups disappeared only a few days later. Even the gaming world did not stay out of it. From the top-down version on the SNES to the side-scrolling version on the Sega Genesis, every game became famous for being frustratingly difficult, yet they were always among the most rented titles at Blockbuster every weekend night. And if you did not own at least one Jurassic Park t-shirt in 1993, then maybe someone should have checked to see if you still had a pulse. Number 4. From a greedy CEO to the grandfather of the dinosaurs. John Hammond appears in Jurassic Park wearing a white linen suit, eating an ice cream, and quietly watching his dream fall apart right before his eyes. And somehow the audience feels sorry for him. But that was never how the character was originally written. In Michael Crichton's novel, Hammond is more like a greedy businessman than a kind grandfather. He yells at his grandchildren, is obsessed with profits, and even dreams of selling genetically engineered miniature elephants as luxury pets. When nature strikes back, Hammond never gets a chance to redeem himself. A fall down a hillside, a broken ankle, and a pack of compies finish the job. There is no emotional farewell, no moment of redemption, he simply becomes lunch. But Spielberg wanted to create a Hammond the audience could sympathize with, a dreamer who was always chasing what seemed impossible, someone who brought to mind Walt Disney. And to bring that vision to life, he invited Richard Attenborough back to the screen after a 14-year break from acting. As a result, the Hammond in the film became a gentle old man with eyes always filled with hope, helplessly watching the work of his lifetime collapse right before him. A cold-hearted billionaire being eaten by his own creations is simply poetic justice. But an old man standing in the middle of a ruined dining room, quietly watching the ice cream in his hand slowly melt as he realizes his grandchildren almost lost their lives because of his own ambition, creates a completely different feeling. And it is that version that has remained in the hearts of audiences for more than 3 decades. Number 3. When Mother Nature suddenly stormed the set. The storm scenes on Isla Nublar look unbelievably realistic because they were actually created by a real storm. During the final weeks of filming on Kauai, a powerful hurricane suddenly struck, throwing the entire production into chaos. The cast and crew had to evacuate quickly to reinforced areas inside their hotel. The set was heavily damaged, many parts of the production had to be put on hold, and the filming schedule was almost completely thrown off. Yet in the middle of all that tension, there was one person who remained remarkably calm, Sir Richard Attenborough. While everyone else sat quietly waiting for the storm to pass, the man who played John Hammond found a corner and peacefully fell asleep. When he was asked how he could sleep while the storm was sweeping across the entire island, he simply smiled and explained that he had grown up during the war, so his idea of bad weather was completely different from that of most people. It was an answer that was both calm and deeply admirable. Interestingly, some of the storm scenes in Jurassic Park were not created with special effects or Hollywood movie magic at all. The production team took the opportunity to film just before they were forced to stop because the weather had become too dangerous. The wind was real, the rain was real, and the crashing waves were completely natural. That is exactly why those scenes feel more realistic than anything that could have been created on a soundstage. When the sky finally cleared, the island was still in disarray, and the entire production was almost stranded because transportation had been disrupted. That was when an unexpected hero appeared, Fred Sorensen, a real-life pilot who had also played Jock, the seaplane pilot in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sorensen helped arrange flights out of Kauai after the storm had passed, getting the cast and crew off the island while commercial flights were still unable to operate normally. It was also the perfect proof of the famous line from Jurassic Park, "Life finds a way." Number 2. The T-Rex hated the rain. A 13,000-pound animatronic dinosaur, and the thing that almost shut it down was not a power failure, but the rain. During the scene where the T-Rex breaks out of its paddock in the pouring rain, the full-size T-Rex model was constantly being drenched. The problem was its foam latex skin. It worked just like a giant sponge. The more it rained, the more water the T-Rex absorbed. Its weight increased rapidly, putting stress on the internal systems and causing a series of electrical problems. As a result, the multi-ton mechanical dinosaur began to shake, twitch, and almost go crazy between takes. So the entire crew unexpectedly became the most professional drying team in the world. Sponges, towels, handheld hair dryers, everything was put to use. Just imagine it. You are an Academy Award-winning effects artist, but your daily job is drying the armpit of a giant dinosaur. But the creepiest part happened during lunch breaks. Water seeped into the interior and caused unexpected electrical malfunctions, making the T-Rex suddenly lunge forward, move its jaws, or let out groans, even though no one was touching the controls. Stan Winston said the atmosphere on the set was genuinely eerie. A predator that looked completely real could suddenly come to life at any moment without anyone operating it. Even on the most expensive movie of its time, the biggest star on the set turned out to be nothing more than a difficult star, one that hated getting wet and threw a tantrum every time it rained. And perhaps that is exactly why the scene still looks unbelievably realistic today. In a way, everything really happened just like that. Number 1. The digital revolution, when dinosaurs entered the digital age. Before Jurassic Park, Phil Tippett, the master of practical creature effects, was still creating dinosaurs using Go Motion. Everything was going according to plan. Then Steve "Spaz" Williams at ILM decided to try a different approach. Williams wanted to find out whether computers could do it better. He was turned down because everyone believed the technology was not ready yet. But Williams kept going. At night, in his own time, he secretly created a fully digital animation of a T-Rex skeleton walking across the screen. When Spielberg arrived at ILM, the screen was still on. He saw the test animation and was stunned. The team then added skin, surface textures, and completed the rendering. What had seemed impossible became reality. Phil Tippett was also in the room that day. He watched the new technology surpass the technique he had devoted years to, then said the line that would later become legendary, "I think I'm extinct." Spielberg liked that line so much that he is believed to have included it in the screenplay. Dr. Malcolm's line about extinction is also believed to have been inspired by that very moment. But Tippett did not disappear. Spielberg kept him on as the dinosaur supervisor. His experience with animal movement helped the CGI artists create T-Rexes and raptors that looked astonishingly real. A single test animation created in secret after hours changed all of Hollywood. Every CGI creature that appeared afterward can trace its roots back to the moment Steve Williams pressed play and Spielberg saw the future. That was not just an interesting movie fact. It was the moment that opened the CGI era, and it all began because one person stayed late after work and pressed play. That brings us to the end of our journey through 12 weird facts about Jurassic Park 1993. Which fact on today's list surprised you the most? Or do you know another interesting story about Jurassic Park? Don't hesitate to share it with everyone in the comments. If you enjoy videos exploring weird facts about classic movies, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss our upcoming videos. Thank you for joining us all the way to the very end. We will see you again on our next journey of discovery.